You're watching Newsfeed, the PM edition, as we continue to unpack various organisations, including political movements, ahead of this year's May 29th election. Well, the Organic Humanity Movement is planning to contest the 2024 national elections for the very first time. The party says that it wants to liberate South Africa by transforming governance and the electoral system, as well as empower citizens to be independent of government and corporate control. OHM National Chairperson Matthew Pienaar joins me in the studio. Matthew, good afternoon. Thanks so much for coming onto the show.
Yes, thanks for having me.
So let's talk about liberating South Africa. What does that entail, and what are some of the values that OHM stands for?
Okay, so our basic premise is that we feel like government is too big in this country. They are interfering in the lives of individual South Africans, and it's unnecessary. We want to change the whole, not just who's running the government, but how the whole government system works. We want to firstly implement direct elections. So instead of voting for a party, you'll vote for a person. You vote directly for the president, for your MPs, for the mayor, and for your councillors. That will make a huge difference in terms of accountability and bring government much closer to the people. And then we want to change parts of the constitution to restrict what government can and can't do. We want much stronger limits on where they're allowed to operate and give as much freedom to individual South Africans. The basic premise is that you should be able to do whatever you want as an individual, so long as you're not harming someone else or interfering with their ability to do
So explain, do whatever you want. I'm sure my kids would love to hear that. Yeah. They can do whatever they want. But we are reasonable individuals, and the reason that we're governed and their laws is because people generally like to operate outside of the prescript of the law. So when you talk about do whatever you want, what does that mean?
So basically you have the maximum amount of personal freedom. You're not allowed to interfere with someone else's freedom. You're not allowed to go and steal from someone else or hurt them, abuse them, whatever. You can operate exactly how you want to as an individual, but the limits are where you started to fringe on someone else's rights. It's basically, you leave me alone if I leave you alone in the society is what we're looking at.
So let's talk about self-reliance, respect for the earth, and how this will be translated into practical policies or initiatives if you were elected to hold various positions in government.
So self-reliance, we believe that South Africans should be able to provide for themselves. They shouldn't have to rely on government for things like healthcare and housing and electricity. We want to help all South Africans to get to a point where they don't have to rely on the government for those things. They can do those things for themselves. It will be a long process because we live in a country where the government's been pushing people down and oppressing them for such a long time that it'll be difficult to get people on their own 2 feet, but we have to start doing that and helping people.
So if we were to look at another country that espouses the values that OHM does, what country would that be?
So I don't think there's a country in the world yet that has gone as far as we would like to in terms of personal liberty and self-reliance. There are obviously some that are closer than others. For example, what is happening in Argentina right now, they were moving very socialist for a long time and lots of government interference, but they're now moving to a place of less governments. They've repealed a lot of laws recently, and that's a similar direction that we want to be going in terms of cutting red tape, making the country easier to do business, easier for individuals to start small businesses, without all sorts of unnecessary restrictions like we have right now.
So obviously there are people that are supporting you, which is why you are contesting in this national election. Now you're a young man. I'd imagine that one of the younger individuals that is chairing a political movement. Let's talk about the sort of response that you've gotten from your peers or the younger voters. South Africa is predominantly young people. I think something in the region of 60-odd% of the population are termed young people.
Yeah, so we have appeal across the board because we don't really look at identity politics. We based on ideology. We appeal to people who want to be as free as possible, and a lot of young people are like that at the moment. They feel like they've been held back by the current systems, and so we do have appeal to those people. The other group of young people is people who have never really thought about what we're presenting. They've only known the political systems that have come before and haven't been presented with this opportunity. So for us, the responsibility is to get that message out there so that young people will know there's another way of doing government, not just what has gone before, where you rely on the government to do things for you, but where you can do things for yourself, and a type of government that helps you to get to the point where you can do that for yourself. That's what we're looking at, and that's what should appeal to young people for us.
Right, so as a young person, as a young party, what are some of the challenges that you've faced in getting your message across to potential voters?
I think the biggest challenge is that it's a very competitive field. I think there's a lot of people that are entering the political space now, and I think the established parties haven't been doing a very good job, which is why there's so many new parties coming forward. And so you've got to stand out amongst that group, and we're trying to do that. We think we have a very unique message. I think we're the only party that's calling for system change. That's not just saying we're going to take over the government and run it better, but that we are going to change the whole way we do government.
Matt, before we let you go, let's talk about what a successful election would look like for you. So post May 29th, when your team and those that support OHM are having a sit down and doing an analysis, if you were to say, guys, we did all right, what will those numbers look like?
So because we're a grassroots party, we don't have any big funders from billionaires or major corporations, and no big political names. We're starting from the bottom with people who are just passionate about making a difference in South Africa, and so it takes a long time to build. We'd like to eventually become, get a two-thirds majority in Parliament so we can make these changes, but that's probably a couple of elections' time. This election, the first step is just to get in the door, to get a couple of seats in Parliament and start having an influence in the conversation in South Africa.